All right, so if you happen to be lucky enough to get to watch Sorbek, Sorbek is one of our favorite animals in the classroom. Obviously, if you haven't gotten a chance to hold Sorbek yet, you may not necessarily realize why. But Sorbek is our American alligator, and comes with quite a bit of seeming attitude, but he's a lot more bark than bite. You can kind of hear him in the background hissing at me. It's because he is hungry. He gets fed a little bit more often than the snakes, which are about every 2 weeks. But Sorbek gets fed every week, and as a result, by the end of the week, he's pretty hungry and ready to go. So there's fish in there that are going to act as snacks throughout the week in case he does get a little bit hungry. But you can tell Sorbek is ready to eat. What I generally tend to do is I try to encourage him to come off into the water, and so that he'll feed a little bit more from down in the water. So I had these thawing out as well in the water, but they don't need to be thawed out. They can just be left out overnight or for a couple hours. But with Sorbek, you can slide this cage lid open. There's a front and a back. The back can pretty much stay where it is. Similar to the snakes, you're going to grab pretty far back on the mouse. All right, these are what are called hopper mice, or sorry, fuzzy mice. They start to have some hair, but they're not super large. The reason for that is if you get larger mice, it's a little bit hard for him to swallow them whole, and it becomes a little bit more complicated for you guys feeding them. If you do end up having to use larger mice, or if you run out of the mice that I give you, just let me know, and I can give you some of these size mice again. But when you are using a larger mouse, they tend to have to swallow them in smaller chunks, and it requires a little bit more you helping them to break them into smaller chunks, which can be a little bit messy and a little bit harder on you and on Sorbek. So with this, I'm holding close to the back. You're going to notice that Sorbek jumps a little bit. All right, so I'm going to hold this up pretty close to Sorbek's mouth, and I really want to try and prevent Sorbek from biting onto these metal tongs or forceps. The reason for that is because he has teeth, and just like if you were to try and bite onto a metal spoon or something like that, it would feel kind of painful. Well, this could damage his teeth if you're not careful. So I'm holding on to the back of this mouse. Same thing. I'm just going to give him a chance to bite this, and pretty easily he can swallow these mice whole because they're about the right size for him to do that. All right. He can have, if you're feeding him every week, he can have anywhere between 2 and 5 of these mice. I would say err on the side of maybe thawing out 2 to 3, and then if he still seems hungry after these, then you can continue to feed more. I'm just going to feed him one more, a third one, just to give him a little bit more food before he goes home for the summer. You can see he jumps pretty quickly, and just make sure to keep your fingers out of the path as best you can. If you do happen to be bitten by any of these animals or Sorbek, just make sure to, first of all, stay calm. You're always welcome. I give you guys my cell phone number, so you're always welcome to call that in the case of emergency. But if you are ever bitten, all right, generally the calmer and the steadier you can maintain your hand, the less likely they are to be getting extra anxious. All right, sometimes you can pour cold water on the top of their head or on their body, and that can kind of shock their system a little bit and might get them to let go. But don't, I would say, don't ever try to actually pry open the jaws of an alligator or of a snake, any of these here. You're more likely to hurt yourself and that animal really substantially. Once again, I'm always on call all summer long or any other time that you're watching these animals. So if you do have any problem with it, I hope that you don't. But if you do have any problem, please make sure just to reach out and let me know. So that's Sorbek. And I forgot to mention his cage has 2 lights on it. It has kind of a daytime heat lamp and also one that just provides some UV light. And it's sitting over this portion of the cage that is his basking platform. Even though that he is mainly aquatic, he does have to get out of the water sometimes and allow his skin to dry. That helps with several parts of its life, thermal regulation, and it also helps with some of their just general skin care. And so make sure that's at some point fully out of the water, and make sure water is not sitting on top of the platform, in other words. and make sure that he can actually crawl up out of the water. There's also a filter in his cage. I'll give anyone who's watching that some extra filters. It's very simple. It's a carbon filter that you just replace about every. I replace them about every month. You can do it more regularly, but I generally do once every month, and I continue to add water as we're going.